Hello there, I'm JD and welcome to my channel. Please email me if you have any questions at jdwatchservice@gmail.com. I need the need sound effects here, and I repair pocket watches as a hobby. If you want to get a hold of me, jdwatchservice at gmail.com. And here we have today, I've already done the work on this. And it's going to be up and coming. So here we have a WA, what is that name? WA Crisp, Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. WA Crisp, Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. It's a beautiful old pocket watch from Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. I got it running again, and you're going to see what I did. Before was not moving at all. I can't remember whether you see a little bit of the before, but this is the after, and it's running. So what type of watch is this, you're asking? It's a 17 jewel, and what does that say in there? American Waltham Watch Company. So this is a full plate movement, American Waltham Watch Company, 17 jewel watch. Nice piece, and it was not working at all before, so now it is working. Quite proud of myself. So let's get on with the video and have a look at it. I've sped the video up, but I'm going to dub over this time just to so you don't get bored. All the heck. All right, let's get the ball rolling. Beautiful Waltham pocket watch from Portage La Prairie, Manitoba, Canada. So it's a very beautiful watch. So here again, I remove the hands by putting a plastic sheet on top so I can protect the face of the watch. So this is an old watch, probably from about 1920, I think. I didn't look up the movement because I wanted to get this thing repaired pretty fast. It's a full plate pocket watch. Had two screws that I had to remove. You can see the balance moving just a little bit, but it was in poor shape. And you'll see when I take the plate off how the pivots for the some of the gears are still stuck in the hole. So just removing the dust cover here and to get access to the screws holding on the face of the watch. So just here I'm trying to let down the watch, and for some reason, usually when I put pressure on the watch like this and then pull the lever to let it down, it works fine. In this case, it just went bam, and it released the safety pinion on the center wheel, which is what that's for. And the safety pinion just ensures that you're not breaking anything, so it just unspins. You'll see that in a few seconds. So I just had to take the balance off, so keep it out of trouble, and put it on my movement holder or my balance holder. And I was wondering which side to put it on. It looked a little bit compressed, so I think I switched it to the other side, and that was just dangling there, and I didn't want to put any stress on it, so it's just sort of dangling. I used that a little later on to undo the screws from the capsule. So that's fine. And I start disassembling it by first removing the face of the watch, and I'll clean that up a little bit later on with some Rodico. So the little screws, I don't screw them all the way out because I want to keep them in place, and then when I take the face off, I'll end up screwing those little screws back in, so when I put them in the cleaning machine, I don't lose those little screws. So here I'm taking off the cannon pinion. That was very easy to take off. I tried grabbing the minute wheel, it just wouldn't come off, so I figured I'd just end up stripping the setting mechanisms and stuff later. And then here's my number 58 Myers movement holder. What a great piece of movement holder this is. So I need to dress my screwdrivers. I had one screwdriver that was kind of oval or cracked or whatever. I need to dress that screwdriver so it doesn't cause me issues later on. And I did notice there's a couple of gold top screws on here. One was in the back, facing you right now, that one there, and then the other ones were hidden, and they're hidden by the bridge for the mainspring. So there's not much. So you don't need to have the ones underneath that bridge being gold. So I took that off and slid it out just very carefully. And guess what? Yeah, look at that. Look at that. So the parts were sticking to the top plate, meaning those jewel holes were super dirty. And I just wanted to have a look at how this thing was arranged, so when I go to put it back, I'll I'll remember. So relying on my memory again. And I'm just stripping it down right now so I can get it ready. There's the pinion, the safety pinion. So I wanted to put that back in place. I decided I'd grab a, just to hold the wheel properly. I needed to grab a pin vise or a vise to hold on to the. There we go, holding on to it nicely now, and then I can take my fingies and I looked at which where the threads went on that, and yeah, there we go, nice and tight. You don't have to make it too tight because the pressure from the mainspring goes against the threading anyway, so it'll stay on as long as the mainspring doesn't snap. So it's made for when the mainspring snaps. So now I decided to just unscrew the setting mechanism, the setting and winding mechanisms here. That's a ratchet there that's used for winding the mainspring from below. And then there's a click spring that needs to be removed there too. And I decided, just like last time with a similar type movement, to leave those springs where they are in case you don't want to break them because it's going to be hard to get. So here I was looking at the setting and winding mechanism here, and the wheel did look like it wasn't the same on both sides. The teeth of the wheel were chamfered, I think the word is. Here I'm tightening the little mini screws for the face. So I'm going to make sure that those screws are in place so they don't fall out. They're really, really small. Yeah, there we go. So that's all good. Ready to rock and roll. And I'll leave that other stuff where it is. And here I do need still to do work on the jewel for the balance, lower balance jewel. There's a cap on there that I need to remove, and you'll see that in a few minutes. But first, I just grabbed that mainspring. Mainspring didn't have much of a wrap on it to wrap around the arbor. I was kind of disappointed when I opened it up and saw that. So I had to do a lot of work later on that you'll see on that mainspring to get it to work properly. I was kind of a little peeved that it didn't have the proper wrapping around the arbor. So that took a little bit of work later on, but wasn't terrible. There's my baskets. Now I got to figure out what to put where. And when I do that, sometimes the mainspring's too high, and then when you put the basket on top of that, it doesn't fit. There's a gap, and then you're going to lose parts that way. So you got to make sure that the parts are flat enough so that basket on top of it actually sits down nice and tight on there. So here I'm removing that couple of the wheels, and I do a little close-up of the wheel here because see the bevel there? That bevel actually had to face down and not up. I thought it had to face up. I was pretty sure when I took this apart it faced up, but it actually faced down because it meshed with the crown wheel that was used for connecting the actual crown and stem. Maybe that's why they call it the crown wheel. Crown and stem with the movement. So I had to do that twice. I put it together and then I took it apart again. So here I'm filling up my little mini baskets. Put the small screws in there. I try to make sure the weight is right too, so that when this thing is spinning in the cleaning machine, I don't get any vibrations or anything. So here I'm just farting around with the lower part of this to see if I can adjust it somehow so that I can have that mainspring on top plus the barrel and not worry about there being a gap when I put that center one in. See, I'm looking at it there and I'm saying it's teeter-tottering, man. It's teeter-tottering. So there's going to be a gap there. So I'll get rid of that gap. Just turn that plate around the other way. Nope, still isn't working. I think I'll try something completely different. Now for something completely different. I decided to take this out here and just flip that lower plate the other way and then just arrange this so it's sort of sitting on top of it and not worry about it. So here we go with the back in there with the mainspring and the cap for the mainspring. And then that fit nicely. Get the thumb there, the tum. This video I think is about 2 hours long if you don't do it in fast motion, but I've got a lot of other cleaning videos, so there's really no need for me to have a very long video. Here I'm looking at, I moved that gear because I wanted the weight to be right again, so just move that over just a bit. There's the pallet fork, and I'll clean that by hand later on. I don't want to run that through the machine because I'm not sure what the cleaning solution does to shellac. All right, now the watch is back from an amazing cleaning exercise. So I'm just taking the parts out and organizing them on the mat. So contrary to popular belief, I'm pretty anal retentive and I make sure all the parts are well organized on the mat. And I got to remove the parts from the little containers. Here I can just take a screwdriver and actually wedge it inside the, in the cap, and then twist it off. And I just dump the parts, make sure it's empty, have a look at it. There's nothing hidden on the bottom of this, and then dump that part. And there's the dial washer too. It's all clean now, so there's a clean dial washer. Now I take this little assembly apart. This can be a bit of a pain to put together, but I managed to get it together today because obviously I did finish the work. So and now I'm just taking the rest of the stuff apart. I noticed when I assembled the watch later on, I actually had an issue with the crown actually pushing in. I'm not sure if I showed that or not, but what it was that when the movement was in the case, it was just slightly off, and that dust cover can get in the way. So I had to just move it ever so slightly so the dust cover wouldn't be in the way, and I could make that crown go in. So everything seemed to be pretty clean here. I was trying to pay attention to the direction of this thing, and I was sure that the chamfer or whatever was on the top and not on the bottom. I think it's called a chamfer, I think. Anyway, time to clean that bottom jewel. So I just take the cap jewel off. I use 2 screwdrivers to do that. You'll see my technique here. I basically take a screwdriver on each side, and I actually lift it up. So I lift it up until I see it move, right? So I just try to get a close-up so you can see how I'm doing this. It works quite well, actually. So just do this and just work it up as it slowly comes up, and then eventually it'll come out. You'll see it pop out in a second. And then I want to, there it is. Now I want to take a piece of pegwood and just rub the bottom of that jewel and get the guck out of there with a piece of pegwood. And then after I've done that, I take a piece of Rodico and then I sweep the Rodico across the top of the cap jewel to get rid of any remaining dirt in there. So I used to toss these guys into lighter fluid, but actually it's not necessary if you do it this way. There's a little shine there, so you can see how clean that is. You want the least amount of friction possible when you put that back in. So there it is, and then I got to put that back in and align it. So here I'm putting the oil in the cap jewel, which is the proper way of doing it to put it in. But when there we go, and I turn that around. But when I did the balance one, I put the oil inside and caused the ball in there, and then put the cap jewel on top because it was a bit trickier as I left it on the tack to do that. So here I'm trying to find home with these screws and put the screws back in. And you got to make sure those screws are finding home nicely and there's no thread issue putting these things in. So, and I was doing that, and eventually I get this thing tightened up. And there we go. Oh, I picked a different screwdriver there for final tightening. Final tightening it's called. And there we're good. So dab those top there, get rid of any dust out of there, and all's good in love and war. Alrighty then, now I've got the challenge of putting the setting mechanism back together again. So the trick here again was that jewel. So I decided to put a little bit of oil inside there because I've got steel on steel, and oil those little pipes that are sticking up where the minute wheel is. And then this very tiny wheel that's used for the setting. See, you can see the bevel. I won't say chamfer anymore, I'll just say bevel. You can see the bevel on the gear, but I swore when I put that gear in, it was facing up. But then when I actually put the watch together, I realized that bevel merges with the crown wheel that rides on the stem for the pocket watch, and so it faced down. So I assembled the whole thing and then had to take it apart and reassemble it with that wheel in the other direction. So I put it in there and hold it down with my hand because you'll see the way this thing works in a second. But I had to hold that down with my hand, get that little tiny gear is sitting on top of a spring, and it kind of bounces up and bounces down, and then that hole aligns with another peg in there. So I've got that little device in there, and I had a little tough time trying to get that screw done, and I think it was because my screwdriver was magnetized and it was causing a pain in the butt. So I just was very persistent with the screw. Probably worked way harder than I ever should have to get a screw in, but I did. So, and I finally got it in there and tightened, and I thought, okay, I'm all good. Then I got to flip this thing around and actually put the little post there in between the spring there. So I did that, got that organized. You see it's in place now, and that just allows that movement to move back and forth. I thought I had it all done, and it worked. It actually worked. Oh, there we go. No, I didn't get the peg in there right. So there, it's in there good now. So then I needed to put a little bit of oil on there where that spring was touching the peg on the bottom of that wheel that's protruding from the bottom of that wheel, and put a little bit of oil in there as well while I'm down there. And then I saw, okay, it moves, it snaps back and forth, but when I went to actually wind this mechanism, it was rough as hell. I was like, okay, it's winding, but it feels like teeth grating against a file. Oh my God, that's painful. So I decided that there must be something wrong here, because it works and it winds. I get a bench key out after and try it out, but it feels so stiff, right? So I'm testing it again to make sure it's good. But and I'm emailing that little half ball that's there that rides up that spring, because it also is metal against steel. And I thought, okay, I'm brilliant. I can do all this stuff. It's all tight and everything, and it's probably going to work fine. And I'll try it out. And then I go and get that bench key. Come on, where's that bench key? And then when I'm turning it here, I'm realizing it is grinding like hell. And then I put a little oil in there, thinking that'll solve the problem. But no, the problem was that the crown wheel has a little bit of an angle to it, so that wheel on the top also needs to have that angle facing down so they merge properly. So I realized that was a problem, and then I quickly decided I need to fix that. There's my symbol that I screwed up. So I had to go back in and fix that all over again. And this little setting mechanism is a pain. I guess if you do like 15 watches a year of this type, it's not as easy. But if you do 15 watches a day like this, you'd have your technique down on how to put that mechanism back together. But I did a pretty good job, actually. So once I got that in place, I'll put that screw in, and here we go again with the old magnetic screwdriver. I'm like, geez, come on, man. Geez Louise. Gotta get this thing in. Oh my God, what a pain in the butt. And so I tightened it, but not completely. And then I had to go on the other side again and take that little spring that's down there and then get the knobby through the spring. It's like two fingers, like your thumb and your fingers squeezing that thing, but it's a spring system, so it kind of opens up so that knob can get through, right? So that's how that works. So I finally got it working nice and smooth. It was like smooth. So there's the click spring going in, and you got to put the click spring in, and then don't let it fall all the way down onto the peg there until you move the other spring out of the way and have it on the right side of the correct side of that click spring. So I oiled the end of the click spring where it hits the ratchet, and there's the ratchet going in there, and the back or the bottom of the mainspring goes into that ratchet. Oh, and by the way, I had mainspring hell with this particular watch because mainspring wasn't coiling around the arbor well enough, and you'll see that in a few seconds. So there we go. I'm testing it. I'm pushing it in, turning it, pushing it in, turning it, and again I'm putting a little bit of oil in there too, just a bit just to get it all nice and lubed up so it's beautiful. And what am I doing next? I can't remember. Oh yeah, I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the inside where I am, and I just put oil on the inside where the wheels are, which is not normal, but you can have the pinions or the base of the pivot touching that jewel base, so a little bit of oil in there probably doesn't hurt. And so here we go. I'm reassembling the gears in the watch here, and you'll see that I have a little bit of a trick that I use to put the pallet fork in. This is something I discovered myself after being incredibly frustrated with these full plate watches. So I said, okay, I got to have a method here of solving this problem that doesn't completely piss me off. All right, now I'm putting the escapement in here and fitting that in. It was tricky too to get in place, even though these don't have a lot of gears. They're very old and they're not made that well for maintaining them. They're a little bit tricky to work on because of that, and you've got to make sure you don't break anything. So you've got to be very careful. So here I'm just cleaning up the pallet fork. I should have really put my Mobius 9415 oil on those jewels. That's the it's more of a gel actually, and that really helps with the friction there. So here I'm finding a home for the pallet fork. Make sure the mouth goes into the little house there, little dog house, and make sure the back end is between the banking pins. And then when I got it all set up and somehow in there, I take a piece of Rodico, stretch that Rodico out to get rid of the dirt, and then take a little tiny piece of Rodico and just touch the top. Don't touch it too hard because you could break the pivot on the other side. and it just has to barely touch it. And then I smush that Rodico down on the other side, and that keeps that pallet fork on the top and inside the doghouse. So with that pallet fork on the top, then I just and the upper pivot on that pallet fork is in that jewel. Then all I have to worry about is getting the lower pivot into the lower plate, which is a little bit easier. So I had it all organized there, and just trying to describe stuff, I guess. And I knew I was going to dub over this video, so I had the audio turned off on it. So here I'm lining it up here, and what I do is I put in 2 screws really loosely when I line it up this way. That way I can move the upper plate of the jewel of the watch around and not worry about it falling out once I get those pivots in place. And again, I don't tighten those screws down until I see all the pivots from both sides going through the jewel holes. So you got to make sure and check 3 times, and then when you've checked 3 times, check a 4th. Because if you screw that thing down and break it, you'll be so pissed off. So here I'm just using my little tapping device to tap the gears to get that lined up. So it takes a boatload of patience when you're tapping those pivots and stuff to get this thing lined up. But I managed to do it. Again, this video is sped up, so you don't see all of the frustrations involved. But having that pallet fork already on the top, being held in by the Rodico, is a blessing. And then you just take your tweezers and grab the Rodico out. It comes out nicely. So, and here I'm testing it, and you can sort of see it in fast motion that the pallet fork is vibrating back and forth, which means the power from the mainspring would push that center wheel and it would work perfect. Now I'm in mainspring winding hell. The mainspring wouldn't connect around that arbor, so I was trying to figure out what direction this thing goes. It was a counterclockwise wind into the barrel, so I tried to get it and it just wouldn't hook right. And I tried everything. I tried to put my thumb in there. I tried every bloody technique in the world. And I was going to give up. And I thought, okay, if this isn't going to work, what the heck am I going to do? I could wind it into the barrel by hand because I've done that before, and I know how to do it. But this is a T-bar, which is a little harder to wind into the barrel by hand because you got to stick the bottom part of the T-post into the hole in the barrel and make sure that's all wound out. Now I tried to put a little bit of pressure on that spring so it would catch the notch and then go over, but the mainspring at the arbor was too wide. So that was my main problem here. And because it was so wide, it was just never going to fit in properly like that. So I thought, well, let me just get my other mainspring winder out and see if I can use that. So I got this other mainspring winder out. I looked at it and I was like, okay, this fits here, that fits there, this still fits there, this goes in here, that goes here, this goes there. The hell with it. So I ended up winding it in by hand. And then I was trying to adjust the center so it would grab the arbor, but I squeezed my thingamajobby doohickey, and that's for a gentleman out there that would appreciate that term. I squeezed it a little bit too hard and then put a bend or kink in there. I thought, well, you know what, I can wind it up now because I've adjusted adjusted it so it would go around the arbor nicely. So that was wound up nicely, no problem. And then here I'm just popping it into the barrel. Pop into the barrel, so it's good to go. Ready to go, ladies and germs. So now I'm oiling the top. The mainspring didn't look as bad as it was, but I went off camera when I wound it back in and had to play with that arbor because it took probably, I'd say, a good half an hour to get that mainspring sorted out properly. I just didn't put it all on film. And here I'm just sliding the mainspring barrel in, and this actually worked better than normal, but you slide it in and then you take your bench key and then you turn it, and it makes that the mainspring ratchet on the bottom line up perfectly with the square post on the arbor. I'm putting these golden screws in. I'd already tightened the other ones underneath, so that's all nice and tight, so everything's kind of ready to go. And I think I checked the pallet fork again to make sure it's popping back and forth. Put a little wind on the thing there, so I'm winding up the mainspring. I'm praying at this time that it's not going to slip on me. This is what you do when you put your mainspring on and you don't want it to slip. You pray. So here I'm just tapping it with pegwood, and it does move back and forth, so there's no issue there. And now I'm putting a bit of oil on the jewels there. Basically, you're putting just a little tiny bit of oil on that, and so I use 9010 for the smaller jewels, and I use a different oil for 9250 or 9520, something like that. Anyway, the blue oil. So I got that all set up. Now I'm going to put on the, or I'm going to oil the base, just the very base of this here, where that is, and then oil these ones as well. So everything is nicely oiled. And then I got to put on the cannon pinion, and this cannon pinion went on so nicely. It works very nice. It's on properly. No issues with the cannon pinion whatsoever. So Yakamadoodah Shithramadaki. I got to do a little bit of work on this balance here. I'd already dunked the balance. I didn't show that, but I dunked the balance already but I couldn't. You can't get the jewel in there, so in the lighter fluid. But I had already dunked the balance, so it was cleaned up. And then I popped this off. Again, same technique. Popped the jewel and picked it up with Rodico. Then again with pegwood, scrape it off like this. And I found if you just scrape it off and don't use Rodico after, it'll leave crud on it. So you just scrape it and then just sweep the top of that cap jewel off. And I'm cleaning up that jewel, and that was very clean, by the way. So the cleaning, putting it in the cleaning machine. Well, I didn't put this in the cleaning machine. What am I talking about? So I put a little bit of oil on the top this time as opposed to putting it on the cap. So watchmakers out there would give me shit for that, but it would still work. It just stays in where it needs to be. So, and then I was able to line it up nicely. And doing the work on the on here is a lot easier. So I just got to make sure I hold it and not put too much pressure on the tack. I don't want the tack to bend, because I do like my little homemade tack, homemade bounce cock holders. So that's those are nice. So there we get the screws nicely lined up here, and I'm tightening those up. And so I've got my cap jewel on perfectly. Pretty happy with that. And then just in case I got crap on the pivot from before, I just put a little bit of I just dab that pivot on the bottom to make sure stuff is off of it. So here we're going to put this, put it in, and when I put it in, you just sort of face it sort of in the opposite direction, let it ride into the hole. And I was pleased that it started running right away. That's always a very good sign. And I like the watch to be moving while I tighten this, so I know the pivots are in the hole. If for any reason it slows down or anything while you're tightening that, then you're going to have a problem, right? Those pivots are not going to be in the hole, and you could break something. So that's my Mobius amazing oil there, gel or whatever it is. So I took a little bit of a picture or video of that to make sure that I get decent amplitude on this watch, and there we go. And this is an old watch, and then here on the inside I'm putting that gel on the inside on the pallet fork, and it'll spread itself around the teeth of the escapement and then make this thing run really nice. So there we go. It's running in fast motion, so looks kind of funny this way. There it is, and we're almost ready to go. All right, now it's time to clean off the face here, and I use Rodico again. You've seen me do that in many videos. I've got a lot of videos that are 2.5 hours long showing this procedure, and I did have a video with this exact same type movement I made probably about a month ago if you look it up. Anyway, so I think now I'm putting on the cannon pinion here. So you line the minute wheel up, put the cannon pinion down, and then make sure those gears are lined up so when it goes straight down, it meshes properly. And I just checked it again and then push it down, and there, perfect. It's meshed perfectly now. And then I've got to put the hour wheel in. Here I'm loosening up the screws that are going to be holding onto the dial feet. So I'm backing them up and looking through the hole in the top until I don't see the top of the screw or the end of the screw. And then I put this the hour wheel in, and it's got the hour wheel washer on top, which prevents the hour wheel from shaking loose and basically touching the face, which then it wouldn't make contact with the minute wheel pinion, and then nothing works. So here I'm just tightening up the screws onto those feet and onto the dial feet, and now it's nice and tight. I'm going to make sure I don't forget to put the dust ring in. So I did that before, and that's the dust ring that was causing me issues when I was trying to push the crown down to snap into place, and it was interfering with that. So if you have that problem, then just rotate the movement just a bit. So I freed up the movement to fix that just by loosening the screws, and then I realized it worked. So when I put the movement in, the screws were lined up but not perfectly, so I should have turned the crown wheel or the crown a bit first before I tightened the screws, just to make sure that that dust cover wasn't interfering with anything. So there we go. So that's put on there, and I put the back on to protect it while I work on the face. Now I got to clean the face up again in case there's any finger marks, residual finger marks that got on it. And then I just decided to dust off the crystal. Crystal was in mint condition, really good condition. So there's no need to do that. So I just lightly put that hour hand on, and then I line it up. So I just lightly put it on. It was poking up a bit, so it was bent a bit at its base. So later on, I take a screwdriver and just push that down just a bit. I'm trying to milk it down here, but later on I do it with a screwdriver, and it works a lot better. I'd rather do it this way than hold it in the vise and try to do it, because at least you know how far down you've gone. And then I made sure that the minute hand was lined up properly, so when the two of them come together, they're at 12 o'clock. So there we go. I got it on, and then I switched it around. Yeah, there we go. Not bad. So here we go. I just milking that hour hand just a bit. And as you can see, it's lined up pretty darn good, I'd say. Then the seconds hand, you just sort of lean it over, and I used the back of my tweezers to push it down. No big deal there. So the watch is done and dusted. And there's my timing on my Saint Martin diver. And I'm checking the time here. And at this point in time, I did have a problem pushing the crown in, but I fixed it later. So here I've got magnetism. So you can see it really fast shaking. So I demagnetized the watch, which gave it better amplitude. And then it's fast motion, of course, so you can't see it go slow motion. But I put this on now, and there was no issue. Thanks very much for watching my video. It was lots of fun.